The ground beneath your feet is an illusion. It is perhaps the oldest and most comforting lie our senses have ever told us. We trust this solidity. We build our lives upon it. We call it the earth. It is the stage for our history, the floor for our homes, and the silent, solid witness to our lives. This trust is absolute, and yet it is a fiction. The world we know is not a static ball of rock. It is a breathing, flowing engine. The world we trust is merely a membrane, a delicate skin of cooled stone floating on a hidden and colossal ocean of liquid fire. We are creatures of the surface. This is our definition, and it is our limitation. We live our entire lives on this fragile crust, yet we perceive it as the only reality. Our senses are trained for the horizontal. We look outward across the plains. We look up into the cold and infinite void, and we call it space. But we rarely, if ever, consider the true vast space that lies directly beneath us. Tonight, our journey will not go upward. We will not seek the distant stars. It will not travel outward across the familiar maps of our world. Our journey is a descent. It is a slow, quiet, conceptual voyage, sinking past this thin veil of the known and into the deep foundational reality of the planet itself. We are leaving the world of light and air, entering a new, unseen, pressurized world. We will imagine the slow increase of warmth, a heat radiating not from the sun, but from the planet's own ancient trapped memory. We will feel the gradual accumulation of weight as the pressure of an entire world begins to press down. This is a journey into the dark, but it is not a darkness to be feared. It is the darkness of the center, the deep generative silence from which all life on this surface ultimately draws its strength. Let the familiar world fade. Let the surface you know dissolve. We are going down. We have committed to the descent. We are letting go of the surface, sinking in our imagination into the profound, dark and silent world beneath. But for this journey to have meaning, we must first understand why it is and must be a journey of the mind. Why it is, in a physical sense, the impossible voyage. The human imagination has always been drawn downward. We have foundational myths of the underworld, a realm beneath our feet. We have a primal curiosity to dig, to uncover. Science, in its own way, shares this impulse. But the planet itself resists. This is not a journey that is difficult in the way the stars are difficult. The stars are a problem of distance. The deep earth is a problem of presence. It is a place that is actively hostile to entry, guarded by two colossal and unforgiving tyrants, pressure and heat. On the surface, we live under the gentle weight of the air. In the deep, we would be under the weight of continents. The pressure is a force so immense that the very concept of a hole or a cave becomes a physical impossibility. The planet would heal any void in an instant, slamming it shut with the force of 1 billion tons. This is the first guardian. It does not work alone. The second tyrant is heat. It is not the gentle, life-giving warmth of the sun. It is an industrial, metallurgical fire, a heat that builds relentlessly with every kilometer. Long before we could even reach the true depths, this heat would melt lead. It would make the rock itself glow and then flow like plastic. No machine we have ever built, no drill, no material forged in our own furnaces could survive this. It would be sterilized, melted, and then crushed back into the dense, unrecognizable rock. This, then, is the nature of our impossible journey. The physical path is barred. So how do we make this journey? If the physical path is a wall, we must find a different door. We must become a different kind of traveler. Our voyage must be one of science, of inference. We must learn to see not with our eyes, but with the echoes. We must learn to feel the planet's own pulse, to interpret the messages it sends. But before we can learn to listen to the deep, we must first conceptually cross the threshold. We must pass that first thin and familiar layer, the skin of the planet. So, we begin. We are now sinking through the first and only layer of the planet that we have ever truly known. This is the Earth's crust. It is the floor of our deepest oceans and the foundation of our highest mountains. It is the solid, dependable ground that our senses have trusted for our entire existence. In our perception, it is the world itself, vast, immovable, and absolute. But in the grand geological reality of the planet, this crust is almost nothing. It is a layer of profound fragility. It is not a foundation. It is a skin. If you were to imagine the Earth as a simple apple, the crust would be far thinner than the apple's skin. It is a delicate, brittle, and cool veneer, spread thinly over the immense, hot, and flowing engine of the world below. This is the central paradox of our home. Everything we know, every life that has ever lived, every ocean that has been sailed, has taken place on this single, fragile layer. This layer is not one solid, unbroken thing. It is a mosaic of the broken. The crust is shattered. It is a collection of immense drifting plates, rafts of cool, brittle rock floating on the softer, flowing world of the mantle beneath. This is the source of our earthquakes, the source of our volcanoes. They are not acts of a wrathful planet. They are simply the sounds of a skin that is too thin and too cool for the hot, powerful engine it is trying to contain. This is the physical reality of the crust, a thin, floating, broken shell. It is this very fragility, this absolute separation between our familiar surface and the deep, fiery world below, that has always haunted the human mind. This dark, seemingly bottomless gap was a mystery that the imagination could not leave empty. Long before science could map this layer with its echoes, our ancestors mapped it with their stories. Before we explore the rock, we must first honor that ancient journey. We must explore the myths that the human mind created to fill the void. Long before the first tremor was ever measured, the human mind had already made the journey. It was a descent born not of science, but of necessity. The surface of the world, this bright, warm, and familiar place, was the realm of the living. But the ground, the soil, was the realm of the final. It was the place where everything we loved and everyone we knew eventually went, and they did not return. This was a finality that the imagination could not accept. It was a one-way door, a silence so profound that the mind was forced to fill it. We could not bear for the void to be empty, and so we built a house in the darkness. We invented the underworld. It was our first map of the impossible. It was a place of shadows, a kingdom of echoes, a world that mirrored our own. It had its own rivers, its own kings, its own laws. It was a place of judgment for some, a place of reunion for others. It was the Greek Hades, the Egyptian Duat, the Norse Hell. These were not just stories. They were a form of physics. They were the mind's first and most profound attempt to answer the silence. It was an act of emotional gravity, a declaration that the ones we had lost had not just vanished, they had simply gone down. This is not a story of rock, it is a story of the human heart. And it is a story that tells a simple truth. Before we ever sought to understand the planet, we sought to understand our place in it. Our scientific journey is new, but this ancient emotional journey is the foundation. Our minds have returned from the realm of myth. We are back in the physical descent, leaving the stories of the underworld behind to face the reality of the rock itself. We are passing through the Earth's crust. But this layer, this brittle skin, is not one single thing. It is a realm of two completely different natures, two separate philosophies of stone. The first world, the one we are sinking through now, lies beneath the land. It is the foundation of the continents. This is the bedrock of our existence, the great, thick raft upon which all terrestrial life is built. If you were to dig down, past the soil, past the sand, past the sedimentary layers of time, you would eventually hit this. This is the continental crust, and its heart, its defining signature, is granite. Granite is a rock of profound contradiction. We see it as the very definition of strength, of permanence, of weight. We build our monuments from it. We carve our history into it. We see it as the absolute, immovable foundation. But in the grand vertical journey of the planet, granite is none of these things. Its true defining secret is that it is light. It is light not in the way a feather is light, but in the way a cork is light compared to an anchor. It is a rock of low density, a crystalline foam forged from lighter minerals like silica and quartz. And this lightness is the single most important fact of our world. Because this crust is light, it floats. It floats high upon the great, dark and far heavier ocean of the mantle that lies beneath it. This is the reason we have land. This is the reason we have a surface to stand on. The continents exist only because their foundations are made of this buoyant stone. They are great, massive rafts of granite floating on a denser, moving sea. This granitic raft is also thick. While the crust is, on average, impossibly thin, the continental portion is its thickest part. It can be 30, 40, even 70 kilometers deep, plunging a great, buoyant route down into the mantle beneath our highest mountain ranges. And it is old. This is perhaps its most profound characteristic. This granitic crust is the planet's memory. It is the Earth's library. Because it is so light, it is almost never destroyed. It does not sink back into the fiery engine of the mantle. Instead, it drifts. It accumulates. It collides and buckles, forming new mountains from the bones of old ones. As we pass through this layer, we are passing through time. The rock surrounding us now may have been forged 3 billion years ago. It holds the chemical echoes of ancient, vanished atmospheres. It is a foundation that is not just a structure, but a history. We are moving through this ancient, buoyant world. But this is not the only crust the planet has. This granitic raft covers only a third of the Earth. Beneath the vast dark oceans lies a different foundation, a crust that is thinner, denser, and far, far younger. We are leaving the granite behind, moving horizontally in our minds under the sea to continue our descent through the oceanic floor. Our imaginary journey takes us sideways. We have left the great ancient raft of the continents. We are now drifting down, miles down, through the cold, black and crushing silence of the open ocean. The light of the sun is a forgotten memory. The pressure of the water here is immense, a physical, encompassing weight. And at last, through this total darkness, we touch the bottom. This is not the bottom we knew. This is not the thick granitic foundation of the land. This is a different and far stranger world. This is the oceanic crust. The first thing we notice is the material. This is not the light, complex granite. This is a rock that is darker, denser, and heavier. This is basalt. It is a stone forged not of buoyancy, but of weight, rich in iron and magnesium. It is a rock that does not want to float. The second thing we perceive is its thinness. This new floor is a pavement of profound fragility. While the continental crust was a thick raft, this oceanic crust is a mere skin. It is a dark, brittle layer, perhaps only 5 or 10 kilometers thick. It is a delicate, temporary boundary separating the cold ocean above from the hot, flowing world of the mantle that lies just below. But its most profound and most paradoxical secret is its age. The continental granite was the planet's memory, its ancient library. This basalt floor is young. In geological terms, it is the planet's present moment. The rock we are touching now is not billions of years old. Some of it, in the grand, slow clock of the Earth, was born yesterday. Why? Because this floor is not a permanent, static thing. It is a process. It is a moving, constantly renewing conveyor belt. To understand this, we must drift to its birthplace, the mid-ocean ridges. These are not mountains, they are wounds. They are vast, world-spanning volcanic seams in the planet's skin. Here, two plates are being pulled, slowly and relentlessly, apart. And into this gap, the mantle itself, the great hot engine below, wells up. This hot liquid rock, this magma, rises and meets the cold black water of the deep. It does not explode. The pressure is too great. It simply and silently freezes. It solidifies into new black glassy rock. This is the birth of the seafloor, a constant, quiet factory. This is the birth. But this process demands a death. This crust is born at the ridge, and it is pushed millimeter by millimeter away from its birthplace. For millions of years, it travels, cooling, condensing, and becoming heavier. And what happens when this heavy, dense basaltic plate meets the light, buoyant granitic raft of a continent? It cannot win. It cannot float. The granite raft overrides it. The basaltic floor has only one possible fate. It must descend. It begins the slow, final, and inevitable plunge. It angles down and it sinks back into the very mantle from which it came. This is subduction. It is the planet recycling its own skin. The basalt is born of the mantle, and to the mantle it must return. We have seen the skin. We understand its nature. But how do we know what lies beneath? We know because we tried to go. We must now visit the single most ambitious attempt by our species to physically breach this layer. We must visit the deepest hole we ever dug. Our journey so far has been one of pure imagination. But our species is not content with just the mind. We are driven to touch, to prove. And in one extraordinary instance, we attempted to make this journey physical. This was not a quest for gold or oil. It was a quest for pure foundational knowledge. It was an act of profound scientific ambition, born in the quiet intensity of the Cold War. While the superpowers raced upward toward the moon, they were also engaged in a second, quieter race, a race to see who could be the first to physically touch the mantle. This quest led us to a remote and desolate corner of the Arctic Circle on Russia's Kola Peninsula. Here, in 1970, the drilling began. The project was called the Kola Super Deep Borehole. Its goal was simple and total: to drill as deep as the planet would allow. This was not a simple hole. It was one of the most complex engineering projects ever undertaken. The drillers were steering a mechanical worm through solid, ancient granite, a rock 2 billion years old in total darkness, at the end of what was essentially a 12-kilometer-long piece of string. For over 2 decades, they worked, and as the hole grew, it began to send back secrets. The first surprise was the water. Science had assumed the granite at these depths would be dry, squeezed empty by the immense pressure. They were wrong. They found hot, mineral-rich water flowing in ancient cracks. It was fossil water, a liquid memory, trapped for perhaps 1 billion years. Then, they found the ghosts of life. At nearly 7 kilometers down, they found the perfectly preserved, microscopic fossils of single-celled plankton. The organic compounds themselves, the molecules of their existence, were still there, held in a high-pressure tomb. But the final and most profound discovery was the one that ended the journey. The models had all predicted a steady, manageable increase in temperature. They were wrong again. The heat climbed far faster, far more aggressively than anyone had predicted by the time the drill reached its final depth. At 12,262 meters, the temperature was not the expected 100 degrees Celsius. It was 180 degrees. This is the heat of a forge. The drillers had encountered the second tyrant. They had met the wall of heat. At this temperature, the rock itself, the ancient granite, began to change. It did not melt. It became, as the engineers described it, like a plastic. It was no longer brittle. It became a dense, hot, and flowing toffee, a substance that would simply move and grip. The drill bit could no longer turn. The hole, in a final, quiet act of planetary resistance, began to close itself. We were defeated. In 1992, the project was stopped. That hole remains the deepest point of penetration by the human species. And what is the true lesson of this magnificent 20-year failure? It is a lesson of scale, 12,262 meters. It is a number of profound achievement. And yet, this great, deep wound had failed to even make it halfway through the continental crust. We had barely scratched the skin. We proved, in the most physical way, that our journey must be one of the mind. We cannot drill. We must listen. But the drill in its failure gave us one final gift. It gave us data. It allowed us to hear the echoes more clearly, and it helped us confirm, with a new certainty, the location of the next great and unseen boundary, the place where this crust finally and truly ends. We are now approaching the Moho. The great drill at Kola is silent. Its 12-kilometer attempt, our deepest physical wound upon the planet, serves only as a monument to our own limitations. We learned in that hot, plastic rock that we cannot force our way down. The tyrants of heat and pressure will always win. So, how do we continue? If we cannot drill, if we cannot see, how do we know what lies beneath? We know because we have learned to listen. Our journey from this point forward is not one of digging, it is one of decoding. We must learn to use the planet's own heartbeat as our guide, to read the messages sent from the deep, echoes that travel through the unseen, solid ocean of stone. This new kind of seeing was born not from a drill, but from a disaster. In 1909, a Croatian seismologist named Andrija Mohorovičić was listening to the Earth. A powerful earthquake had struck near Zagreb, and his instruments were recording the shock waves, the pulse sent out by the planet's fracturing skin. He was looking at the data, the spidery ink lines, when he noticed something that should not have been possible: an anomaly, a ghost in the machine. His instruments, far from the earthquake's center, were recording two distinct arrivals, two separate shock waves. The first was the one he expected. This was the wave that had traveled directly through the crust. It was the local wave, taking the predictable, shallow path. But there was another, a second wave. This second wave had arrived sooner than the first. This was the paradox. How could a wave that had, by logic, traveled further, plunging deep into the earth before racing back up, arrive first? A wave cannot travel a longer distance in a shorter time. Not unless it had cheated. Not unless it had, for part of its journey, traveled through a completely different medium. A medium so profoundly different, so much denser and more rigid than the crust, that the wave could accelerate to an impossible speed. It was like two travelers starting at the same point. One takes the short, winding country road. The other takes a brief detour to a great, solid highway, a highway that allows for incredible, effortless speed, and thus arrives at the destination first. Mohorovičić had not discovered a place. He had discovered a highway. He had found, in that ghostly, early arriving echo, the indisputable proof of a boundary. He had found the bottom of the skin. He had found the line where the familiar, brittle rock of the crust ends, and where a new, unknown, and incredibly dense world begins. We call this line the Mohorovičić discontinuity in his honor, or more simply, the Moho. This is not a physical line you could see. It is not a seam. It is a change. It is a shadow, a transition of pure physics, a place where the rules of our world, the rules of the crust, are suddenly and absolutely rewritten. This line is the true flaw of our world. It is the boundary that separates the skin from the body. And, as seismic echoes later confirmed, this boundary is not a perfect sphere. It is deepest beneath the thick continents, and alarmingly shallow beneath the thin, dense floor of the oceans. We have now, in our mental journey, arrived at this line. We are at the bottom of the crust. The thin, familiar veil is now above us. We are crossing that boundary, leaving the skin behind. We are entering the great, dark and flowing unknown, the single largest and most dominant layer of our planet. We are sinking into the mantle. We have crossed the boundary. The Moho is now above us, a faint conceptual line separating us from the only world we have ever known. We have left the crust. We have left the skin, the thin, brittle raft of granite and basalt. We are now inside the true body of the planet. We are sinking into the mantle. The first thing that we must comprehend is the scale. This is not just a layer. This is the planet. The mantle is a realm of almost unimaginable size. It is a vast, dark and silent ocean of stone that begins just beneath the skin and extends for nearly 3,000 kilometers downward. It is a presence that dwarfs everything we have ever known. It accounts for more than 80% of the Earth's total volume. It is the engine, the bulk, and the true hidden mass of our world. What is this place? The human mind, in its hunger for simple metaphors, wishes for this to be a place of fire. We imagine a vast, molten, liquid ocean of magma, a hell of churning, bubbling lava. This is a fiction. The truth is far stranger and far more complex. The mantle is not a liquid, it is a solid, it is rock. If you could, by some miracle, be transported here, you could, in theory, stand upon it. You would be standing on a substance of profound and absolute solidity, a rock denser and harder than anything you have ever touched. But this is where our human senses fail us. This is where our understanding of time and of physics must be abandoned. This is a solid, but it is a solid that flows. We have met the two great forces before. On the surface they were guardians, walls that blocked our path. Here, in the mantle, they are not guardians. They are the environment. They are the air. They are the very laws of physics that govern this new, strange and alien world. The heat rising from the planet's distant core is immense. It is a heat that should, by all logic, melt the very rock we are in. It is a temperature that screams for liquid. But the pressure, the colossal, suffocating, solid weight of the world above forbids it. The pressure is a force that does not just crush, it holds. It is a great, planetary, solid embrace. It squeezes the very atoms of the rock so tightly together that they are forbidden from changing. They are forbidden from the elegant, chaotic dance of becoming a liquid. This is the great paradox of the mantle. It is a rock that is so hot, it is desperate to melt. But it is a rock that is under so much pressure, it is forced to remain a solid. So what does it do? It cannot break, it cannot melt. It yields, it moves with a slowness that is almost a form of stillness, a process we call plastic flow. It is a solid, but it behaves like an impossibly thick, dense and heavy liquid. It is a river of stone. It moves not in inches per hour, but in centimeters per year. It is a speed that is, to our frantic human clock, the same as absolute zero. It is a motion so slow that in a human lifetime it is invisible. But in the vast, slow and patient clock of the Earth, in the great span of millions of years, this slowness is the most powerful force on the planet. This slow, solid, flowing river is the engine that moves the continents. The rock itself has a name. It is peridotite. It is a heavy, dense rock, and its heart is a mineral of a strange and beautiful color. Olivine. We see it on the surface sometimes, as a scattering of small green crystals. But here, in its home, in its pure, pressurized and high-heat state, it is the defining color of this new world. We are sinking through a vast, dark and endless ocean of a deep, alien green. We have just entered. We are in the shallowest part of this great green sea. But this top is not a simple, uniform thing. The mantle's first layer is a place of transition. It is a place that is still, in some way, bound to the cold, brittle skin that it holds up. The very first part of this journey is through a layer that is still cold enough. still rigid enough to be a prisoner of the crust above. This is a layer that has a name. It is the layer that forms the great, broken rafts of our world. We are in the lithosphere. We are inside the mantle. We have passed through that great green and paradoxical ocean of solid stone. But this new world, this dominant layer, is not a simple, uniform thing. Its personality changes with depth. And here, at the very beginning of our journey, we are passing through its strangest and most contradictory part. We are still shallow, just beneath the Moho, and here the mantle is still a prisoner. It is a prisoner of the world above. The surface of the earth, the realm of air and of space, is a place of profound and absolute cold. That cold, that lack of heat, leaches downward. It is a chill that has been sinking into the rock for billions of years. It penetrates the thin skin of the crust, and it continues, plunging deep into the uppermost part of the mantle itself. This cold changes everything. The heat rising from the planet's core is still distant. The pressure is still immense. But here, the cold from above is the dominant force. And this cold, this relentless theft of energy, makes the rock rigid. It does not flow, it does not yield. It has been chilled into a state of solid, brittle glass. This layer, this cold, rigid and unyielding cap of the upper mantle, is the lithosphere. We have, in our minds, been using a metaphor. We have called the continents rafts, but that was not the whole truth. The granite of the continents is only the deck of the raft. The basalt of the oceans is the floor of a different, thinner raft. But the true structural integrity, the true buoyant hull that carries these worlds, is this, the lithosphere. The lithosphere is not just the crust. It is the crust, and this cold, frozen, brittle top of the mantle, all fused together into one single, solid and integrated plate. This is the great, drifting and broken thing upon which we live, because this layer is not one single, unbroken shell. That is the most important truth. The lithosphere is shattered. It is a global mosaic of the broken. It is a collection of perhaps a dozen colossal plates and many more smaller fragments, all fitting together like the cracked shell of an egg. And these plates are moving. They are floating. They are drifting with the slow, imperceptible patience of the river of stone that lies beneath them. And as they move, they grind, they collide, they tear apart. This is the home of our geology. This is the stage. When one of these great lithospheric plates, these rafts, grinds against its neighbor, the rock does not flow. It is too cold. It is too brittle. It can only break. It holds the stress. It bends. It resists until the stress becomes an impossibility. And then, in a single, violent, catastrophic instant, it snaps. That sudden, jarring rupture, that release of 1,000,000 years of stored tension, is what we feel on the surface. We call it an earthquake. Every earthquake in the history of our world is born here, in this cold, rigid and brittle layer. It is the sound of the raft cracking. We are passing through this layer now, descending through the very hull of the great broken plate that carries our continent. It is a place of profound and cold and brittle tension. But as we continue our descent, a change begins. We are sinking deeper, away from the surface. The cold, leaching, external influence of the world above begins to fade. That memory of the void is lost. A new influence, a new power begins to win. The heat from below, the great internal planetary fire. The pressure is still immense, but the rock is warming, and as it warms, it is beginning to remember its true nature. It is remembering that it is not a brittle, solid thing. It is remembering that it is a solid that wants to flow. We are leaving the rigid, cold raft. We are about to enter the true, hot and flowing river, the engine room. We are approaching the boundary between the rigid and the plastic. We are sinking into the asthenosphere. We have left the rigid raft above. The cold, brittle physics of the lithosphere is now a fading memory, a cracked, solid ceiling. We are entering a new state of being. The cold from the surface, that great leaching influence of space, can no longer reach us here. The balance of power has shifted. The planet's own internal ancient fire is now ascendant. This is the asthenosphere. The name itself, from the Greek, means the weak sphere, and this weakness is the single most profound and most important secret of our entire journey. It is this weakness that makes our entire world possible. The rock here, that same deep green olivine, is now at a point of exquisite and perfect crisis. The heat is so intense that the rock is at this very moment at or perhaps just past its melting point. It is desperate to become a liquid. But the pressure, the colossal, suffocating, solid weight of the world above forbids it. The rock is trapped. It is too hot to be a true solid. It is too pressurized to be a true liquid. So what does it do? It does not break, it does not melt, it yields. For the first time in our journey, the rock has softened. It has lost its rigidity. It has become a plastic. It has become a solid that can flow. This is the river of slow stone. This is not a liquid river. It is a substance that, to our frantic senses, would feel harder than steel. But on the great slow clock of the planet, it is an impossibly thick, viscous, moving tar. It is a glacier, but a glacier of hot, green, glowing stone. This is the layer that lubricates the world. This weakness, this plastic nature, is the key. The great, hard, brittle rafts of the lithosphere, the plates we live on, are floating on this. It is the grease in the planetary machine. And because this layer can flow, the plates above can move. This is the why of every earthquake, the why of every volcano, the why of the continents themselves. It all begins here, in this dark, hot, and paradoxically weak sphere. The lithosphere is where the drama happens, the place where the continents crack. But the asthenosphere, this is the reason it happens. This is the deep, hot, and silent current that pulls the rafts apart and that pushes them back together. We are moving with this current now, but this current is not a stagnant, lazy thing. It is an engine, and an engine must have a motion. It must have a cycle. This river of stone is hot, and heat does not like to stay in one place. Heat must rise. We are about to witness the single most powerful movement on our planet, the great, slow and silent turning of the stone itself. We are about to see the engine in its truest form, the great currents of convection. We are floating in that river of slow stone, the asthenosphere, a place of profound and perfect paradox, a solid that flows, a rock that is weak. But a river must have a current. A flow must have a direction. This weakness would be meaningless if it were a static, uniform thing. It is not. This layer is an engine, and an engine must have a motion. That motion is born from the most simple and most powerful force in the universe. Heat rises, cold sinks. This is the entire story of the mantle. This is the story of convection. To understand this in our human minds, we must imagine a simple, familiar process. Imagine a pot of water placed upon a stove. The stove is the heat source. The pot is the Earth's mantle. The cold, open air above the pot is the black, freezing cold of space. The heat from the stove warms the water at the very bottom. As this water warms, it expands. It becomes, in a microscopic but profound way, less dense. It becomes lighter than the cold, heavy water that sits above it, and so it must rise. A plume of hot water begins its journey. When it reaches the surface, it meets the air. Here, it is exposed to the cold and it begins to lose its heat. It cools, and as it cools, it contracts, it becomes denser, it becomes heavier, and so it must sink. It falls, a cold plume, back down to the bottom, where it will once again be heated. This loop, this constant circular and silent turning, is a convection cell. This is the engine. Now, We must take this simple human-scale metaphor and we must stretch it until it breaks into a new and planetary scale. The stove, the burner at the bottom, is the Earth's core. It is a star of solid iron blazing with a heat that rivals the surface of the sun, and it is surrounded by an ocean of liquid metal. This is the great furnace of our planet. The pot of water. This is the mantle, that 3,000-kilometer thick ocean of green olivine rock, and the cold, open air above. This is the lithosphere, that cold, brittle and rigid plate of stone we live on, exposed to the absolute zero of space. The rock of the mantle, the rock at the very bottom, touches the furnace. It is superheated by the core. Over a span of time that we cannot comprehend, it begins to soften, to expand. It becomes buoyant, and so it must rise. This is not a fast, bubbling ascent. This is a motion of geological time. It is a great, solid and continental-sized plume of rock rising with a slowness that is, to us, a form of absolute stillness. It is a journey that takes perhaps 100 million years to complete. This great rising plume of hot, solid rock finally reaches the top. It cannot go further. It collides with the cold, hard ceiling of the lithosphere, the bottom of the raft we live on. It cannot go up, so it spreads out. It begins to flow horizontally, just beneath the skin of the planet, dragging on the bottom of that brittle plate. It is a river of friction, a vast, slow, and unstoppable force. And this is the engine. This great, sideways, subterranean drag is the quiet engine of the continents. This is the force that pulls the plates apart at the mid-ocean ridges. This is the force that grips the bottom of our granitic raft and pulls it, with an imperceptible, relentless power, across the globe. But this rock, this current, is now far from its heat source. It is flowing beneath the cold lithosphere. It is transferring its ancient internal heat upward, radiating it slowly away into the void, and as it loses its heat, it begins to cool. As it cools, it contracts. It becomes denser, it becomes heavier. It is no longer buoyant. It can no longer float, so it must sink. It begins the second half of its great circular journey, the long, slow and final descent. It is a cascade of cold, heavy rock plunging back down into the deep, dark and silent world of the mantle, where it will one day reach the core, be reheated and begin the cycle again. This is the great turning and thermal engine of our planet. Science, by listening to the echoes, has mapped this. We know this is the reality. It is a world of substance, a world of dense, hot and flowing solid stone, a world that is full. And yet, the human mind, in its long and creative history, has always found this solid scientific answer unsatisfying. The mind loves a void. The mind loves a mystery, a space that can be filled. It has, for centuries, dreamed of a different reality. An answer that is not a dense, hot solid, but an open, empty, and perhaps even habitable space. Before we go deeper, we must take a pause and honor this other great journey, the journey of pure and persistent speculation. We must explore the idea of the hollow earth. Our scientific journey, the one we are following, shows us a world that is full, a planet of dense, pressurized and flowing stone. It is a solid through and through. But there is another story, an idea that is perhaps more ancient and more seductive to the human mind, an idea that whispers a single, profound and simple question. What if it is not? What if the planet is a shell? This is the great romantic and persistent dream of the hollow earth. It is an idea that rejects the hot, crushing and uninhabitable reality of science. It is a story that replaces the furnace of the core with a different and more magical engine. It imagines a vast, internal and concave sky, a secret second world hidden beneath our own. In this dream, this internal world is lit by its own private and central sun, a miniature star blazing in the center of the great void. And this world is not a sterile geological curiosity. It is a refuge, a land of the lost. the home of ancient vanished civilizations, of impossible creatures, of a paradise that is not above us, but within us. This idea has, for centuries, wrapped itself in the language of science. It has used gravity and magnetism and the poles as its proof. It has dreamed of great, open and secret gateways at the ends of the earth. But this is not a journey of physics. This is a journey of the heart. It is a testament to our species' profound and unquenchable desire for the map to be incomplete, a need for a new and hidden frontier. This is not a story of rock, it is a story of hope. It is a beautiful, captivating and enduring myth. And myths, as we have come to understand, often tell us less about the world and more about the minds that need them. Our scientific journey pauses. It acknowledges this great human dream. And now it must continue its descent back into the solid, silent, and scientific deep. The dream of the hollow earth has faded. It was a comforting human-scale story. But the reality of the planet, the one told by physics, is far stranger, denser, and more magnificent. We are returning to our descent, leaving that river of slow stone, the asthenosphere, far above us. The rock is no longer weak, it is no longer a soft, lubricating layer. As we sink deeper, the tyrants of our journey, heat and pressure, are growing to a scale that is almost computational. The pressure is now so immense that the very concept of flow is being challenged. We are entering a new realm. This is not a smooth, linear, or gentle journey. We are arriving at a place of profound and violent transformation. This is not just a deeper layer, it is a different state of being. We have entered the transition zone. It is named this for a simple and brutal reason. The rock we have known until now, the deep, green and olivine-rich peridotite, can no longer exist here. It has reached its breaking point. This is the great crisis of the mantle. The rock is now under a pressure that its own familiar and ancient atomic structure cannot support. The atoms, the crystalline lattice that makes olivine, are being squeezed to a point of absolute systemic failure. It is a house that is too small for the weight it must now carry. But it cannot break. It cannot melt. The pressure is too uniform. The heat is too perfect. So it must do the only other thing it can. It must rebuild itself. It must, in an act of pure high-pressure alchemy, abandon the very shape that defines it. It must unmake itself and reforge its own atoms into a new and more compact and more efficient design. A design that is stable at this new, terrible and crushing depth. This is not a slow, gentle change. It is a sudden, physical and jarring snap. As we sink, we would pass through this invisible chemical floor. The olivine, in an instant, collapses, and it is reborn as a new, denser and bluer mineral, a mineral called wadsleyite. And then, as we sink deeper still, this new mineral reaches its own crisis, and it too must collapse and be reborn again. It becomes a third and final and even denser form, a beautiful, deep blue and alien crystal. Its name is ringwoodite. This then is the transition zone. It is a 250-kilometer thick band of pure solid-state transformation. It is the planet's own internal and metamorphic engine, a place where the rock, in a desperate, silent and alchemical act, is forced to change its own fundamental name, just to survive. We are sinking through this silent, blue and crystalline world now. But this rock, this new and alien and pressurized gem, holds the single, greatest and most profound secret of our entire planet. When science first conceived of this mineral, it was a mathematical necessity, a calculation on a page. And then, by a beautiful and impossible accident, we found a piece of it. It was not a piece we dug up. It was a piece that came to us. A tiny, imperfect and flawed diamond ejected from these impossible depths by an ancient, violent and volcanic eruption. And inside this diamond, a microscopic and flawed inclusion was found. It was a speck of this new, blue and impossibly rare mineral. It was ringwoodite. But it was not just ringwoodite. It was the flaw, the imperfection that told the story. Because this crystal, this new, dense and perfect blue structure, is thirsty. In its very design, in the way its atoms are forced to align, it has a flaw. It has a space, a structural gap, where it can, and it must, trap the components of water. It does not trap water, it does not trap a liquid, it traps the H and the O. It traps the very idea of water, and it binds it with an atomic, chemical and structural force into its own solid and crystalline self. This is not a wet rock. It is a rock that is, in its very chemical nature, water. And the flaw in that one tiny and imperfect diamond allowed science to calculate how much of this water it could hold. The answer to that question is the reason this layer matters. The transition zone is a vast planetary scale band of this new, blue and water-hungry mineral. And the calculations, when they were done, revealed a truth that is almost too large to comprehend. This single, solid and bone-dry layer, this band of hot, blue and pressurized crystal, holds, trapped within its very structure, as much water as all the blue, liquid and surface oceans of the entire planet combined. Perhaps some models suggest 3 times as much. This is the planet's true and greatest ocean, and it is an ocean that is a stone. It is a reservoir of water so vast it defies our imagination, and it is a reservoir that is held in a place of such profound heat and pressure that it can never, ever be a liquid. It is a dry, blue and solid sea. This is the great, quiet and foundational miracle of the mantle. But it begs a question. How do we know this? How do we know this layer is there? How do we know it is blue or that it is full of water? The diamond was a clue, a single, lucky and microscopic hint. But we do not need the diamond. We do not need to guess, because this great, transformative and mineral-filled layer screams. It screams in a language that we have learned to hear. We must now, on our journey, pause and learn how we see in this total darkness. We must learn to read the planet's own pulse. We are sinking through a world that should be unknowable, a realm of such profound, crushing and absolute darkness that our own senses are rendered useless. We are in a place where light has never been, and yet we can see. We have mapped this world. We know that the transition zone exists. We know it is a place of dense blue crystal. We know this not because we have seen it, but because we have, after a century of patience, learned to listen. We have learned to feel the planet's own deep and rhythmic pulse. This is not a journey of sight, it is a journey of seismology. The planet is not a quiet, dead or static object. It is alive. It is a thing of immense and stored and terrible tension. And as we learned in the lithosphere, this tension is held in the cold, brittle rafts of the crust. Sometimes that tension becomes too great. The rock breaks. It snaps. We on the surface call this an earthquake. We call it a disaster, a tragedy, an end. But in the slow, scientific and patient journey of the deep, an earthquake is something else entirely. It is not an end. It is a beginning. An earthquake is an act of communication. It is the single, loudest and most profound sound the planet can make. It is the moment the earth speaks. When the rock snaps, it does not just shake the ground beneath our feet. It rings the planet. It rings it with a sudden, violent and vibrational force, like a colossal iron bell being struck by a hammer. And the sound of this bell, this sudden, percussive and energetic wave, must travel. It does not just travel outward across the surface in the wave of destruction that we fear. That is only half the story. The sound, the true, deep and energetic pulse, also travels downward. It is a wave of pure, physical energy. A shockwave that plunges at thousands of kilometers per hour directly into the deep, dark, and unseen world of the mantle. And this wave is our light. This is our probe. This is our eye. We have, in our patience, built a new kind of ear to listen for this pulse. We have scattered thousands of these ears, these seismographs, across the entire skin of the planet. They are listening, in total, vibrational silence, 24 hours a day, for the next time the bell is struck. And when it is, when the great deep pulse is sent plunging into the earth, our journey of listening begins. Because this wave, this sound, is a messenger, and it is a messenger that carries a story. It travels through the solid green rock of the asthenosphere, and its speed is predictable. We know this traveler. But then, as it plunges deeper, it strikes a new and hidden and unseen boundary. It strikes the transition zone. It strikes that new, hard and dense wall of blue wadsleyite and ringwoodite. And in that instant, everything changes. The wave does not stop, but it is altered. When sound, or light, or any wave passes from one medium to a new and denser medium, it does two things. It accelerates and it bends. It is a physical and universal and unavoidable law. The wave, striking this new, denser and crystalline layer, suddenly leaps forward, its speed changing in an instant, and it is refracted, its path bent, like a ray of light passing from the air into a pool of water. And our ears, our thousands of seismographs on the surface, record this. They record the echo. They record the jump. They record the exact, precise, and fractional second that the wave changed its mind. We listen not to one earthquake, but to 10,000. We listen to the echoes as they arrive, from every angle, through every part of the planet. We are like a doctor tapping a patient's back, listening for the change in sound that reveals the hidden solid organ beneath. This is how we see. We are not mapping with light. We are mapping with echoes. We are building a picture of a world we can never ever see by listening to the way it vibrates. We have built a map of the unseen, a geography of the deep, a blueprint of the impossible. And this map, this echolocation, has revealed not just the where, but the what. Because the planet does not just send one kind of message. When the bell is struck, it does not ring with one note, it rings with two. And these two separate and profoundly different messages, these two travelers, are the ones that, in their very nature, revealed the final, greatest, and most profound secret of the Earth's deep heart. We must now learn the language of these two travelers. We must learn the language of the P and S waves. When the great bell of the Earth is struck, when the rock in the crust finally snaps, it does not release a single, simple note. It releases a complex and beautiful and violent chord. This chord, this sudden vibrational pulse of energy, travels in two distinct and profoundly different ways. These are the two great messengers, the two travelers. The story of how we know the unknown is the story of these two travelers and the profound and fundamental difference between them. The first traveler is the P wave. The P stands for primary or pressure. This is the first wave. It is the scout. It is the bullet. It is the first, fastest, and most direct message that the deep earth can send. When we are on the surface, this is the first, sudden, and jarring jolt of an earthquake, the thump that arrives before the true shaking begins. But what is this wave? It is not a shake. It is a push. The P wave is a wave of pure, longitudinal compression. It is, in its very essence, a sound wave, a sound of impossible and geological and low-frequency power. It travels through the rock by shoving it, by pushing and pulling it, in the exact same direction that the wave itself is traveling. Imagine a long metal spring. If you push one end, that push, that compression, travels down the spring to the other end. The spring itself does not move sideways. It just compresses and expands, compresses and expands. This is the P wave. It is a wave of pure pressure. And because it is a wave of pressure, it is the universal traveler. It is a messenger that can and does pass through anything. It can travel through the solid, brittle rock of the crust. It can travel through the hot, plastic and flowing rock of the mantle. And just like a sound wave in the air, it can also travel through liquid. It is relentless, it is fast, and it is a traveler that can cross any boundary, solid or liquid. It may bend, it may change speed, but it does not stop. This is the first traveler. And then, in the same violent and single instant of the earthquake, the second traveler is born. This is the S wave. The S stands for secondary or shear. This is the second wave. It arrives later. It is the slower and more complex part of the chord. And it is, in its very nature, a completely different and far more profound kind of being. On the surface, this is the wave we fear. This is the shake. This is the rolling, violent and sideways motion that topples buildings and destroys cities. The P wave was a push. The S wave is a wiggle. It is a transverse wave. It does not move the rock by pushing it. It moves the rock by shearing it. It shakes the rock up and down, or side to side, in a motion that is perpendicular to the direction the wave itself is traveling. Imagine shaking a long, heavy rope held by a friend. You do not push the rope, you give it a single, sharp, sideways snap, and that S shape, that wave, travels down the rope. This is the S wave. It is a wave of pure physical shear. And in this one, simple and beautiful difference lies the entire secret of the planet. Because to travel, a P wave only needs a medium. A solid, a liquid, a gas, it does not care. It will push through all of them. But an S wave needs something more. To travel, a shear wave needs a material that is rigid. It needs a substance that, when it is bent or twisted or sheared, snaps back. Solid rock can do this. It is rigid. You can shear it, and its own internal and solid strength will snap it back into place, passing the energy along. The solid mantle, the peridotite, for all its plastic flow, is still a rigid solid. It can be sheared. But what about a liquid? Imagine for a moment trying to send that S wave, that sideways shake, through a pool of water. Imagine trying to shake a rope that is made of liquid. You cannot. A liquid, by its very foundational definition, has no rigidity. It has no shear strength. It cannot be snapped. It cannot hold a shape. If you try to shake it sideways, it does not snap back. It simply yields. It flows. The wave is not transmitted. The wave is absorbed. The wave dies. This is not a theory. It is a physical and absolute and non-negotiable law. An S wave cannot travel through a liquid. This, then, is the language. This is the Rosetta Stone of the deep. We now have our two messengers. The P wave, the fast, relentless scout, the traveler that can pass through anything, solid or liquid. The S wave, the slower, more complex artist, the traveler that can only pass through solids. And with these two simple and profound truths in our hands, we can now, at last, stop just listening to the planet. We can start mapping it. Because this is not just a story about what we hear. This is a story about what we do not hear. This is the story of the great planetary and silent echo. This is the story of the shadow zone. We now have our language. Two messengers, two voices, the P wave and the S wave. One can travel through anything. The other speaks only the language of solid rock. With this understanding, scientists of the early 20th century began to listen to the Earth in a new way. They stopped listening for the nearby tremors, the local stories, and turned their instruments toward the far side of the world. They waited for the planet's great bell to ring, for a massive earthquake to send its pulse across the globe, and then, on the exact opposite side of the Earth, They listened for the faint echoes that would arrive. The first messenger, the P wave, came through. It was weak, delayed, and distorted, but it made the journey, a whisper that had traveled more than 8,000 miles through the planet's interior. Yet something was wrong. It arrived late, bent out of shape, as though it had passed through a strange and heavy lens. It hinted that the deep interior was not what we thought it was. Then came the waiting for the second messenger, the S wave, the slower, shaking traveler of solids. Scientists knew when it should arrive. They waited, they listened, and in the deep, perfect silence of the instruments, nothing came. The second voice had vanished completely. This was not an accident or an error. It happened every time, for every earthquake. On the far side of the Earth, there was always a vast, circular region of absolute silence, a shadow zone, a place where the S-wave simply did not exist. There was only one possible explanation. The law of the S-wave is absolute. It cannot pass through a liquid. Its disappearance meant it had struck a barrier, not a layer of rock, not a denser solid, but an ocean somewhere deep inside the planet. The rock itself had become liquid. That realization changed everything. The Earth was not solid all the way down. Beneath the mantle's green plastic flow lay a molten sea, a furnace of liquid metal. The P-wave confirmed it. Because it can travel through liquids, it crossed that hidden ocean, but it slowed, bent, and re-emerged, weakened on the other side. By measuring this delay, this bending, and this shadow of silence, scientists could finally map the invisible. They could calculate the size of the planet's secret heart. This was the moment the picture of the Earth shattered and was reborn. The world was no longer a single solid mass. It was layered, alive, and molten within. But our descent is not yet complete. We have not reached that fiery ocean. We have only proven it exists. Before we touch the core, we must still pass through the largest and most uniform layer of them all, the vast, silent chamber that sits just above the inferno. We are now sinking into the lower mantle. Our descent continues. We are falling ever deeper, leaving the strange, blue and transformative world of the transition zone far above us, that hidden ocean of stone that holds the memory of water. The seismic echoes, our guides in this darkness, have revealed a profound truth. They have shown us, through their patterns and their silences, that somewhere far below, an ocean of liquid fire waits. The deep earth has already cast its shadow. But we are not there yet. Before we can reach that hidden sea, we must pass through the greatest, deepest, and most mysterious realm of all, the lower mantle. This is not a zone or a boundary, it is a kingdom. It begins where the blue crystals of the transition zone end and plunges nearly 2,000 kilometers down, a vast and silent chamber that forms the true bulk of the Earth. More than half the planet's mass resides here. This is the body of the pot, the foundation beneath all foundations, the solid heart of the solid world. Here, the familiar balance between heat and pressure is rewritten. The great, invisible tyrant of our journey, pressure, now rules completely. It is no longer a force we can measure or even properly imagine. It is an absolute law. The heat that rises from the core below is immense, but here it is trapped, bound, and held captive. The rock no longer flows as it did in the asthenosphere. It is not weak, not pliable, not a river of stone. It is hot beyond comprehension, yet locked into a state of perfect, crystalline rigidity, an eternal, unmoving grace enforced by the weight of the world itself. The minerals of the upper mantle cannot survive here. The beautiful blue ringwoodite of the transition zone collapses under the pressure, its atomic structure crushed into a denser, more stable form. What emerges is something new, the final and most abundant substance on Earth. a single mineral so common that it makes up the majority of the planet's interior, yet so remote that no human eye has ever truly seen it where it lives. We call it bridgmanite. We are now descending through a 2,000-kilometer thick ocean of this one mineral, a solid sea of unimaginable density and stillness. It is the planet's great waiting room, where everything slows to the rhythm of geological eternity. Convection still exists here, the slow turning of the mantle's heat. But it is not a river. It is a drift measured not in years, but in epochs. A pulse so slow that to the human mind it feels like stillness itself. This is the deep earth, the quiet chamber, the last great wall of stone that separates the solid world from the molten heart below. The S-waves could not pass through what lies beyond this point. Their silence has already told us what waits there. As we fall through this final solid guard, we are approaching the edge of the liquid world, the fiery ocean that lies at the planet's core. We have reached the bottom of the solid world. Our descent has carried us through thousands of kilometers of the mantle's dark interior, through its slow green rivers of stone, through its strange blue and water-bearing crystals, and finally through the vast and rigid stillness of the lower mantle, that silent, superheated fortress of solid rock. And now the fall stops. We have reached the edge. This is not a place in the human sense. It is a threshold drawn in physics. It is the boundary that we discovered not by what we heard, but by what we could not. The S-waves told us this was here, the cliff hidden inside the planet's silence. This unseen frontier is called the Gutenberg discontinuity, named for the man who patiently mapped that silence and calculated its depth. 2,900 kilometers below the surface, the rules of the world change completely. The transformation here is more absolute than the difference between air and water. Above lies the solid realm of rock. Below begins the liquid kingdom of metal. Here, the faithful messenger of the solid world, the S-wave, meets its end. It plunges downward, crosses the line, and vanishes. The traveler of shear and shake strikes a medium with no rigidity, no lattice to resist, no structure to rebound. It is a wave trying to move through something that cannot hold a shape. Its motion dies instantly, absorbed without echo. The shadow zone begins here, but the other traveler continues. The P-wave, the pulse of pure compression, can move through anything that has mass. When it reaches this frontier, it does not die, it plunges through. Yet in that instant, it is transformed. It slows violently, as though a bullet had struck water. Its speed is cut in half, it bends, it weakens, and it emerges changed. That sudden, measured slowing was the signature that Gutenberg saw on his instruments, the proof of the shadow and the proof of a hidden sea. We will follow that survivor now. The S-wave is behind us, entombed in the stone it cannot leave. The P-wave presses on, carrying us with it into a new and alien world. We are stepping off the cliff and into the furnace. We are leaving behind the entire rocky kingdom of the mantle, the world of geology, of crystal and pressure and solid stone. The physics of rock are no longer our laws. Ahead lies a place where the planet begins again, in a different form entirely. We are entering an ocean of molten metal, a vast, convecting, liquid sea of iron and nickel, churning endlessly in the dark. We have crossed the threshold. We are now in the outer core. We have made the plunge. The solid world is behind us. The Gutenberg discontinuity, that great seismic cliff between the world of stone and the world of metal, now lies far above. We have crossed into the realm that casts the shadow, the place where the S-wave, the traveler of the solid, met its silent end. We are sinking into an ocean, but this is no ocean of water and no ocean of rock. We have left behind the physics of geology, of silicates and crystals and stone, and entered a new and more elemental kingdom. This is the outer core, the vast sea of molten iron. It is an ocean of almost inconceivable scale, more than 2,000 kilometers deep, a layer so immense that it could swallow every mountain, every continent, and every ocean on the surface world many times over. And here, the twin tyrants of our descent, heat and pressure, reach their final and most extreme forms. Pressure now is beyond comprehension. It is not a weight, but a state of existence. Millions of atmospheres compressing every atom into near-perfect density, and heat, too, has evolved into something stellar. This is not the warm glow of the mantle. It is the fire of creation itself, 4,000 or 5,000 degrees Celsius, the temperature of the surface of the sun. This is not a dark world. The darkness of the mantle was the darkness of a solid, a still and heavy silence. Here, the liquid glows from within. The iron shines with its own white-hot light, a storm of incandescence, a furnace bright enough to birth a planet. And yet, within this fire lies a paradox. Why is this world a liquid? We have fallen from a place even hotter, the lower mantle, and yet that realm was solid. There, the pressure had crushed every possibility of flow. It had won the war. But the substance has changed, and with it, the rules. We are no longer in rock, we are in metal. And here, in this glowing sea, the ancient conflict between heat and pressure finds a new outcome. The heat is now too great. It has overcome the tyranny of compression. The atoms of iron, squeezed into impossible density, are at last free to move, to slide, to break their bonds. They are free to become a liquid. This is no sluggish, tar-like plastic flow, as in the asthenosphere. This is a true liquid, a churning metallic ocean with a viscosity not unlike that of water. It moves, it stirs, it boils, it is alive with motion. At the bottom of this sea, where it touches the boundary of the inner core, the iron is hottest. Near the top, where it meets the colder solid floor of the mantle, it is cooler. The difference drives an endless cycle. Hot metal rising, cooler metal sinking, in a slow, planet-sized convective storm. The entire core is in motion, a vast, rolling boil of liquid metal that never ends. And this ocean does not simply churn, it spins. The whole planet is rotating once every 24 hours, and this molten sea, this conductive fluid of iron and nickel, is dragged along with it. The result is one of the strangest and most beautiful consequences of all physical law. The movement of metal creates electricity, and the movement of electricity creates magnetism. This is the planet's dynamo, the great, silent engine that hums at the heart of the world. It is a generator of impossible scale, a self-sustaining machine that weaves a magnetic shield around the planet. The outer core is not merely an ocean, it is a furnace, a current, and a heartbeat. And the magnetic field it creates, this invisible halo stretching far into space, is the single reason the world above, our fragile blue and sunlit surface, is still alive. We are floating in the engine room. This is not a metaphor. We are inside a true planetary-scale electromagnetic generator, a machine of almost perfect and accidental design. A dynamo in our human world is simple. It needs only 3 ingredients: a conductor, motion, and a magnetic field. The Earth's outer core possesses all 3 on a scale that defies imagination. The conductor is the world itself, this endless, white-hot ocean of liquid iron, a sea of molten metal eager to carry electrical charge. This is not just a furnace, it is a river of potential, a flowing current of possibility. The second ingredient is motion. We have already seen this. The outer core is not still, it is in constant, violent and rolling turmoil. Heated from below by the blazing inner core and cooled from above by the mantle, it churns in vast convection currents, colossal plumes of rising, buoyant iron and slow, massive cascades of sinking, denser metal. It is a global cauldron of continuous motion, a thermal heartbeat the size of a planet. But motion alone is chaos. Boiling is not order, it is noise. For a dynamo to exist, the chaos must be organized. The random motion must be shaped into something coherent, and that organizing force comes from the simplest and most elegant of all influences, the planet's spin. The entire molten ocean is trapped within a world that turns once every 24 hours. This rotation is the conductor's sculptor, twisting the rising plumes and sinking streams into vast spirals, helical, corkscrew columns of flowing metal as wide as continents and as tall as oceans. Through the Coriolis effect, the planet's spin transforms turbulence into structure, chaos into architecture. And here the machine switches on. Physics provides the rest. When a conductor moves through a magnetic field, it generates an electric current, and when an electric current moves, it generates a magnetic field. It is the simplest, most beautiful loop in nature. Motion creates current. Current creates magnetism. Magnetism shapes motion. Perhaps billions of years ago, a faint whisper of magnetism from the newborn sun brushed past the molten Earth, a stray remnant of the solar nebula. That tiny passing field was enough. The churning, spinning metal felt its touch, and in that instant, a small electrical current was born. The moving current produced its own magnetic field, stronger than the first. That field, in turn, stirred the iron more effectively, creating a stronger current, which produced an even stronger field. The loop closed. The storm fed itself. This is the geodynamo, a feedback engine that has burned for billions of years. Heat drives the churn, spin shapes the motion, motion creates the field, and the field in turn organizes the churn that sustains it, a self-perpetuating planetary machine. And its influence cannot be contained. The field generated by this ocean of moving iron is not confined to the deep earth. It bursts upward through the mantle, through the crust, through the air we breathe. It surrounds the planet in a vast, invisible cocoon that stretches tens of thousands of kilometers into space. This is the magnetic field, the quiet guardian of the world. It deflects the solar wind, shields our atmosphere from erosion, and turns the deadly rain of cosmic particles into gentle curtains of light at the poles. The auroras are not ornaments of the sky. They are the visible breath of this hidden engine, the shimmering signature of the molten heart that protects all life above. We are drifting inside the core of a miracle, a machine that no one built, but that has never stopped running. The Earth's magnetic sky is not a symbol. It is the shield itself, born from the fire beneath our feet. This engine is not for itself. The raging, self-sustaining storm of liquid metal, this planetary dynamo, is not an internal curiosity. Its purpose is not in the core. Its purpose is, and has always been, on the surface. The force it creates, this vast and invisible magnetic field, is the only thing standing between the world we know and the void. It is the guardian, the shield, and it is defending us right now from a force that has no mercy. It is defending us from the sun. We are taught to see the sun as gentle, as warmth, as light, as the source of life. But this is only half the truth. The sun is also a roaring nuclear storm, chaotic and explosive. It is not silent. It is screaming. From its surface, it hurls a constant gale of radiation and particles into the void, a storm that never ends. This is the solar wind. It is not a breeze. It is a hurricane of charged particles, racing through space at 1,000,000 miles per hour, a continuous storm of atomic shrapnel aimed directly at us. Were our planet unprotected, this wind would strip away our atmosphere molecule by molecule, erasing oceans, skies, and every breath of air. We know this because we have seen it happen. Mars bears the scar. Once, long ago, it too possessed warmth, water, and air. But its internal engine cooled, its core froze, and the dynamo died. The magnetic shield collapsed, and the solar wind arrived. Over millions of years, it peeled away the atmosphere, erased the seas, and left behind a cold, red, and silent world. That is what our own engine prevents. That is the quiet miracle of the outer core. The invisible magnetic sky it forges is the armor of the world. When the solar wind strikes, it meets this field, an unseen curved barrier of force that bends the deadly storm around our planet. The wind divides and flows past, like water around a stone, its fury deflected by the elegance of physics. Yet the shield is not flawless. Some of that energy escapes, funneled toward the poles where it collides with the upper atmosphere, igniting atoms of oxygen and nitrogen in ghostly curtains of color. The aurora is not just beauty, it is evidence. It is the visible scar of a battle being fought every moment above our heads, a battle we are winning only because an ocean of molten iron thousands of kilometers below is still churning. This is the gift of the core. An invisible magnetic sky born from a furnace of metal, a shield forged in motion and heat. It is the reason the Earth is not just a planet but a home. Yet even this miracle has inspired unease. For while some see the magnetic field as a shield, others have imagined it as a prison, a wall that keeps us not safe but contained. Science has given us an answer. The churning core creates a shield, an invisible protective bubble that keeps the death of the cosmos at bay. But the human imagination, restless and romantic, has always wondered whether that shield was truly built for us. What if it is not there to protect but to conceal? What if it is not keeping the universe out but keeping something else in? This question is the seed of one of humanity's most enduring and elaborate dreams. It is the evolution of the Hollow Earth myth, transformed from a simple void into a destination, a hidden kingdom within the planet's heart. We have given it names, poetic and sacred, Agartha, Shambhala. In this story, the core is not a furnace, but a paradise. It is the final refuge of an ancient race, a perfect civilization that once walked the surface but retreated from its chaos. They withdrew beneath the crust, into the quiet and radiant depths, and built a world untouched by time. Here they live, according to the myth, in peace and wisdom, surrounded by crystalline cities and inner suns. They are the keepers of forgotten knowledge, the guardians of old magic and lost science, waiting for the surface to remember what it has lost. And in this vision, the vast molten engine of the core is reimagined. It is no longer a dynamo or a shield. It becomes a wall, a magnetic barrier of their own design, a gilded cage that separates our turbulent realm from their perfect one. The field that deflects the solar wind becomes, in this dream, a cosmic lock. It keeps the outer world's noise and violence from spilling into their sanctuary. This is not a story of physics, but of longing. It is the ultimate romantic fantasy, the belief that we are not the pinnacle, that somewhere below us exists a wiser, older humanity, preserved in purity and silence. It is beautiful, haunting and persistent, a mirror of our deepest wish, that perfection exists somewhere, if not above the clouds, then beneath the stone. Yet the journey we follow belongs to another truth. Our path must honor this dream, acknowledge its power, and then let it go. For the story of the Earth does not end in myth. It continues downward, into the realm where imagination yields to physics, where the fire of the liquid core gives way once more to solidity. It is time to leave the ocean of molten iron and seek the final hidden continent, the solid land at the center of the world. We are floating in the dynamo, in the heart of the engine, a 2,000-kilometer thick ocean of white-hot, liquid and churning iron. For a long time, this was the end of the story. The map was complete. The great S-wave shadow, the zone of silence, had proven that the Earth's center was a single, vast and liquid sphere. It was a simple, elegant and satisfying answer. And it was wrong. The planet, in its layered complexity, held one last and most beautiful secret. That discovery belonged to a quiet observer, Inger Lehmann, a Danish seismologist in the 1930s, who was listening not for the obvious but for the impossible. She studied the faintest tremors, the nearly invisible echoes that seem to appear inside the shadow where no wave should ever be. The model of the Earth was clear. The liquid outer core bent the P waves, the great travelers of compression, creating its own shadow zone, a region on the far side of the planet where those direct waves could never arrive. Yet they did. In the records, laymen found faint ghostly arrivals in the forbidden zone, whispers that defied physics. A traveler had reached a place it was never meant to go. The only possible explanation was that its path had changed, that deep within the liquid iron sea, the wave had struck something new. It had bounced, deflected, and echoed from a boundary that no one had ever imagined, a boundary that was solid. In that single, delicate pattern of echoes, laymen had found proof of an island at the center of the ocean. The P waves, upon entering this mysterious heart, had sped up, not slowed down, revealing a core within the core, a place where iron no longer flowed, but stood rigid under impossible pressure. The planet, it turned out, did not end in chaos. It ended in order. This was the birth of the inner core. Laymen had drawn the final line on the map of the Earth, the hidden shoreline between the liquid metal of the outer core and the solid world at its center, now known as the Lehman discontinuity. We have arrived at that boundary. The molten sea lies above us. Ahead waits a world that seems impossible. It is hotter than the surface of the sun, yet perfectly solid. Here, in the very heart of the planet, heat and pressure have reached a balance so absolute that motion itself has frozen. We are making landfall on a shore that no eye will ever see, a landscape of glowing iron crystal, the most alien terrain in existence. It is the final paradox of our journey. The center of the Earth is not fire, but stillness. We have made landfall. In our imagination, we are standing on the inner shore of the world, the Lehman discontinuity. The great, white-hot ocean of the outer core churns above us, a glowing ceiling of liquid metal, boiling and rotating in endless motion. Beneath our feet lies the final continent, the smallest and strangest of all, the inner core. Inga Lehman's ghostly echoes proved beyond all doubt that this place is solid. The P waves, those faithful messengers of compression, accelerate as they enter this realm, a signature that cannot be faked. Here, at the very heart of the Earth, we are standing on something rigid, crystalline, and immovable. And in that single fact lies the most profound paradox of the planet. This place should not exist. The twin tyrants that have guided us from the crust to the core are still here, heat and pressure. But their eternal war has reached its final, decisive moment. The heat, at this depth, has reached its zenith. It is no longer the warmth of the deep mantle, nor even the furnace of the liquid core. It is a temperature of 5,000 or 6,000 degrees Celsius, the same as the surface of the sun. It is a stellar fire trapped inside the Earth, a heat that should vaporize any material, that should turn iron itself into glowing gas. And yet, it is solid. This is the final inversion of every law we know. The reason lies in the other force, the one that has been waiting for this moment to triumph. The pressure here is not a number we can express. It is an absolute condition. Every ton of rock, every ocean, every layer of mantle and metal above presses inward with perfect symmetry. This is the point where the weight of an entire planet converges upon itself. The atoms of iron at this depth are not calm. They are vibrating with stellar energy, desperate to break free, to melt, to become fluid once more. But the pressure forbids it. It holds them so tightly that even at this unimaginable temperature they cannot move. Their agitation becomes trapped. Their fire becomes form. They are forced into alignment, locked into a crystalline lattice by pure compression. This is not freezing by cold. It is freezing by force. The iron here has not cooled into solidity. It has been crushed into it. The inner core is a paradox made real, a star that has collapsed into stillness, a furnace that cannot burn, We are standing on a sphere of solid metal that glows with the light of its own confinement, a shining heart imprisoned by its own gravity. This is the final truth of the Earth, a frozen star at the center of a living world. But this is not the end of its story. Even here, in the stillness, there is movement. Science, by listening to the echoes once again, has begun to map this realm too, and what it has found is perhaps the most beautiful revelation of all. We are standing on the shore of the inner core, at the center of all things. We have proven, through paradox and echo, that this place is solid, a sphere of iron blazing with the heat of the sun, yet crushed by its own unimaginable weight into stillness. But what kind of solid could exist here under such impossible conditions? At these depths, freezing does not mean cooling. It is not a slow, chaotic solidification, nor the haphazard clustering of atoms. Pressure of this magnitude is not a brute force, it is order itself. It compels perfection. The crushing weight of an entire planet presses down on every vibrating atom, forcing it to find the most efficient, the most symmetrical, the most stable arrangement possible. In this relentless compression, chaos is forbidden. Disorder is physically impossible. And so the atoms obey. They fall into line. They lock into a repeating pattern, a perfect geometry of survival. They build a crystal. The inner core is not just solid iron. It is a crystal of iron, not a shard or a grain, not a cluster of facets within rock. It is one continuous planetary scale crystal, formed by pressure so complete that it extends from pole to pole as a single unified lattice. Imagine a diamond the size of the moon, glowing white hot in eternal darkness, its atoms bound together by the weight of the world itself. This, impossibly, is real. Seismology revealed the proof. When P waves, our faithful travelers of pressure, pass through the inner core, they move faster when traveling from pole to pole than when crossing from east to west. The difference is small, just a few seconds, but it is profound. It means that this inner world is not uniform. It has a grain, a direction, a preferred path. The waves move more easily along one axis because the atomic structure itself is aligned that way. This is anisotropy, the signature of a crystal. Those faint, measurable seconds of difference are the sound of order, the rhythm of a lattice that spans a planet. The heart of the Earth is not a formless ball of metal, but a single, oriented crystal, its atoms aligned with the planet's spin. We have reached the end of the map, a world of incandescent iron, frozen not by cold but by pressure, spinning inside a sea of molten metal. It is the foundation of everything that stands above it, the fixed axis around which the continents drift and the oceans turn. And yet, this crystal heart is not ancient in the way a mountain is ancient. It is not static, it is alive in time. It is still forming, still growing, as the molten ocean around it slowly freezes at its surface. Every second, new iron crystallizes at its edge, locking into place, joining the structure. The solid core of our world is being born now beneath our feet. We are standing at the end of our descent, at the very heart of the world, and what lies before us is not a monument of the past, but a living act of creation. The inner core, that great white-hot crystal at the center of the Earth, is not finished. It is growing. The heart of our planet is being born right now. To understand this, we must see the Earth not as a solid thing, but as a story of heat, a long, slow story of fire fading into silence. The Earth was born from violence, from the collisions of newborn worlds. For 4.5 billion years, it has been cooling, radiating the last of its ancient warmth into the void. It is a dying ember drifting through space, a colossal stone slowly surrendering its fire. And yet, from that surrender, something beautiful is happening. The liquid outer core, the churning ocean of molten metal above us, is losing heat to the mantle, which loses it to the crust. which loses it to the emptiness of space. This slow cascade of cooling changes everything. The ancient war between heat and pressure begins to turn. The heat weakens, the pressure does not. At the very center, where the pressure is greatest, the balance shifts. The molten iron, now just cool enough, cannot remain liquid. It can no longer sustain the elegant chaos of flow. It is forced to freeze atom by atom. It locks itself to the solid crystalline surface of the inner core. This is the moment of birth, a quiet, metallic snowfall at the center of the Earth. In this hidden blizzard, iron snow falls inward. It settles and fuses with the crystal beneath it, growing the core millimeter by millimeter over millions of years. This slow, irreversible process is the planet's true heartbeat. It is the clock by which the Earth measures its age, ticking in molten time. But this is not a cold event. It is not a quiet freezing into death. The act of crystallization, the transformation from liquid to solid, is a release. When order replaces chaos, energy must be freed. The inner core does not just form, it burns. Each moment of its growth releases a burst of latent heat, a surge of thermal energy that rises into the liquid metal above. This is the secret of the dynamo. The growth of the solid heart fuels the motion of the liquid ocean. The crystallization releases the heat that keeps the outer core convecting, the great rolling motion that drives the magnetic shield. The inner core freezes, the outer core churns, and the Earth's invisible protector continues to hum with power. The birth of the crystal sustains the life of the planet. It is an exquisite feedback loop, a machine that keeps itself alive. The cooling drives the growth feeds the heat powers the shield, and the shield allows the world to cool in safety. The planet is both patient and alive, a clock that runs on the energy of its own unwinding. We have reached the end of our descent, the center of the world, a solid iron star encased in fire, growing in silence. And yet even here, in this perfect symmetry of forces, science has found a new whisper, a new anomaly. A faint, impossible echo within the crystal itself, a ghost inside the heart of the Earth. Our journey, by all logic, should end here. We have reached the final shore, the solid, crystalline heart of the world. We have seen the frozen star at the planet's center, understood how it formed, and watched the slow, metallic snow that feeds its growth. The story should be complete. But the listening never stopped. The instruments, the quiet, tireless ears of seismology, kept recording, refining, and reaching deeper into the echoes. They began to hear something new. Faint distortions, whispers within whispers, ripples that should not exist. Amid the deep, clean pulse of the inner core, they heard a ghost, a subtle, shifting echo that hinted at another boundary. We once believed the inner core was a single, vast crystal, aligned neatly along the planet's spin axis. We knew this because P waves moved faster through it from pole to pole than across the equator. A clear sign of crystalline order, that alignment was the fingerprint of a unified structure. But the new data told a more complicated story. The acceleration of those waves was not smooth. Deep in their journey near the very center of the planet, the waves faltered. Their speed changed again. The pattern bent. The echoes arrived a few fractions of a second too soon, or too late. Something was different. It meant the alignment of the crystal, its very grain, shifted. At a depth of more than 5,000 kilometers, the Earth's heart changes direction. The atoms below that invisible line point another way. The inner core, it turns out, is not singular. It is layered. It has an inner heart of its own. This is the innermost inner core, a solid within the solid, a sphere inside the sphere. We have reached the end of the map, only to find another world nested inside it. And here, even the language of science begins to falter. What is this place? Why is it different? The theories are whispers, as delicate as the echoes that revealed them. Some believe this inner seed is a fossil, the original crystal that formed first before the planet's spin settled into its modern rhythm. Its alignment may preserve the memory of an ancient Earth, a geological signature from a time when the world was still assembling itself. Others suspect it marks a deeper transition, a place where pressure and heat reach a new kind of extremity. Perhaps the iron here has crossed into a new phase of matter, one that cannot exist anywhere else in the solar system, a form of metal so compressed, so alien, that even its atomic structure defies the patterns known to physics. We do not yet know. We are listening to echoes from the heart of the heart, and they are still faint, still new, still wrapped in mystery. Our long descent has peeled away every layer, the crust, the mantle, the molten ocean, the crystalline core, and in the very center of it all, where everything should finally end, we have found not an answer, but a question, a silent, radiant question mark glowing at the heart of the earth. Our descent is complete. We have reached the innermost place, silent, radiant, and absolute. We have touched the hidden geometry at the center of everything, the crystal within the crystal, the secret heart inside the heart. And now our long journey must reverse. We begin the ascent. In the mind's eye, we rise from that white-hot lattice of iron, leaving behind the stillness of the inner core. We drift upward through the vast metallic ocean of the outer core, through the luminous storm of liquid fire, the churning dynamo that hums with planetary electricity. The light fades from molten white to deep orange. The pressure begins to loosen its grip. We rise through the boundary that separates metal from stone, the Gutenberg discontinuity, and re-enter the world of silicate minerals. The mantle closes around us, a colossal cathedral of slow, crystalline flow. Here, the rock is solid yet alive with motion, a deep green stone sea frozen in the instant of movement. Higher still, we pass into the transition zone, where minerals reshape themselves under impossible pressures, where water is imprisoned in the crystal lattice of stone. Above that, the rocks soften, the world grows warmer and more mobile. We drift into the asthenosphere, the plastic, slow-moving layer that carries continents like rafts. And then at last we cross the Moho, the final threshold. The weight above us falls away. The dense green of the mantle gives way to the lighter greys and pinks of the crust, granite and basalt, ocean floor and mountain, light and air. We are back on the surface, back where our story began. But it is not the same world, and we are not the same traveler. The ground beneath us is no longer a still, solid certainty. It is a roof, thin, fragile, and floating atop a living machine. We have seen the machine's depths. We know now that this crust drifts upon a slow, convecting river of stone. That river moves because it is heated from below, driven by the great thermal engine of the mantle. And that engine burns only because of the fire from the core, the same fire that powers the churning ocean of iron. And that molten ocean, in turn, is kept alive by the growth of the crystal beneath it, the slow, inward snow of iron that releases its heat of creation, keeping the dynamo alive. The dynamo forges the magnetic shield. The shield protects the surface cools. The cooling grows the crystal, and the cycle continues. It is an unbroken chain, a planetary heartbeat. The growing crystal fuels the dynamo creates the shield guards the sky, the mantle turns, the crust drifts. Mountains rise, oceans open, continents breathe, life adapts, grows, and thinks. And then there is us. We are not passengers on this machine, we are part of it, a fragile biological expression of its deep mechanics. Every heartbeat, every storm, every word we speak owes its existence to that ancient, white-hot crystal 6,000 kilometers below our feet. The engine is not beneath us. The engine is within us. The earth does not simply hold life, it creates it, sustains it, and shapes it. through an endless conversation between fire and stone. And somewhere at the center of that conversation, the crystal continues to grow, quietly, perfectly, forever. We have returned. The descent is over, the circle closed. We are back on the surface, back on the thin, cool skin of the world, surrounded by the air that the deep engine allows us to breathe. The lights of the room, the faint hum of life, the quiet darkness. They are all waiting exactly as we left them. The ground beneath us feels steady again, but now we know what that stillness means. It is not the stillness of absence. It is the stillness of balance. The quiet is not emptiness. It is equilibrium. Beneath this moment of peace lies an ancient motion, so vast and so patient that our senses can only translate it as calm. We are being held by the crust, this floating continent of stone beneath our feet. We are being carried by the mantle's slow river of rock, flowing endlessly beneath that crust. We are being protected by the magnetic field, that invisible shield born of molten metal, which turns away the sun's fury and keeps our sky intact. And at the center of it all, holding the weight of everything, is the crystal, white-hot, dense beyond imagination, growing even now in the dark. The crystal is the clock, the pulse, the heart. This is the true silence of the earth, not a void, but a perfect conversation between forces. It is the sound of gravity and pressure and heat agreeing to coexist. It is the quiet hum of balance that every rock, every tide, every heartbeat obeys. The solid ground beneath you is not still. It is simply so complete, so unified in its motion, that it feels like peace. That peace is the echo of the planet's core, a calm born from fire. There is nothing left to seek. The journey downward has revealed that everything, the stone, the air, the oceans, and you, is part of the same patient machine. The engine turns, the crystal grows, the earth holds you. You can let go now. You can rest. The silence is not empty. It is alive, and it is holding you.